How would it feel to have an audience that loves what you do and wants to buy from you? In this episode, I'm going to tell you how to tell stories that educate, connect, and sell simultaneously. We're also going to talk about my best advice for entrepreneurs with young kids, how to launch a brand new social media channel when your content is about you specifically, my biggest highlight moment of the year, my best advice for finding your ideal client, and how I managed to keep my energy so high with a 2.5-year-old and a very busy business. This is That Storytelling Podcast, and you're going to get the full story behind my business. So grab a hot beverage, get cozy, and let's get started. Okay, let's dive into the questions. The first one is, what's the first thing I should talk about on a new page if it's about rediscovering yourself? Oof. Okay, the first thing I would post is a trailer to season 1 of your show. In this TV show, you are the main character and you are becoming better every single day. If you think about the first few episodes of your favorite show, you will see that they're building up the backstory of the main characters so that you can feel empathy for them. If you've ever watched a show where you just couldn't get into it, it's probably because you didn't like the main character or main characters, and therefore you couldn't buy into the story. So the first thing that happens is that you tell your backstory. You let people know where you came from and where you're going so that they can put themselves in your shoes and they really start to root for you because they like you as a person. The second thing that happens in the first few episodes of a show is that they establish the stakes. Season 1 shows you what the main character has to gain and what they have to lose. And this creates beautiful tension for the audience. There's lots of examples of successful creators who are doing this, and I'll put a few of my favorite ones in the description below. The second question is biggest highlight moment of the year. That's a fun question. The past 10 months have been my favorite 10 months of my entire career. I hired 2 coaches this year to work on my business with me, and they are called the Sales Girls, Macy McNeely and Catherine Schubert. I started this business in March 2024, and I joined their program in April 2024. Like most people, I felt super weird and icky about sales, and I knew that if I was going to make money in my business, I needed to get comfortable and really good at sales. The highlight of my year was at their live event in September in Georgia. They announced a new award for the person who was learning their material the fastest. And it wasn't just about learning the material, but actually implementing it in the real world and coming to the calls every week with questions that were rooted in trying things out in the wild.
And I am so excited to announce the Pacesetter Award goes to, are y'all ready?
Yeah.
You better drum roll for me right now. Ashley Renders.
I ended up winning the award. This is the Pacesetter Award. I just was not expecting it at all. I really pride myself on taking imperfect action every single day, just putting one foot in front of the other, even if I'm scared, even if it doesn't make sense. I continue to move the needle on my business, but I didn't know that anybody was watching. I wasn't expecting to be seen so clearly.
You are a winner from the day that I saw you on that challenge.
Another reason that this award meant so much to me is because I left behind so much to start my business. I started this business in March, and in May, a film that I worked on was premiering at Cannes. I wasn't working for the film company anymore, but I had a credit in the film. So I flew myself there on my own dime because I knew that it was going to be a once in a lifetime experience. And I'm so grateful that I did that. I had no idea how validating it would be to walk the red carpet at Cannes and to see my name on a solo card and to see the 8-minute standing ovation that the film received. My whole team was there. We had an incredible time. I love all of them. And it was so tempting in that moment to go back to my old career. I wasn't making a lot of money. Everything felt very uncertain. And I couldn't help but think that I was making a horrible mistake. But I knew that I needed to go home. I needed to let the champagne wear off. I knew that Cannes was not real life. And sure enough, after a few days of being home and remembering what what my life feels like, I knew that I had made the right decision and I continued pressing forward in my business. I didn't realize how emotional that decision actually was until I won this award and was recognized for the work that I had put in. It felt like a sign that I had chosen the right path and I had done the right thing, because there was a little tiny voice in my head that was still questioning if I had made a mistake. In my acceptance speech, I talked about how a 10x jump, a big jump in your life where things improve significantly, is never linear. It never looks like I was here and then I was here and then I was here and I climbed the ladder and I hit my goal. It's always I was here and then I was here and then I was way over there, and everything improved when I had the courage to make the jump over there. And this award really solidified it for me. And my business really has grown exponentially ever since that moment. So that is the highlight of 2024. The next question is, what would be your best advice on trying to figure out your ideal client? The first thing that I did when I started my business is I started to tell stories to a previous version of myself. I didn't have to go that far back in my history because I was her a couple of months before. I was really stressed out in my job. I wanted to build something that was my own, and I wanted to spend my days working on things that I felt excited and passionate about. So it wasn't hard for me at all to speak to this earlier version of myself. I'm willing to bet that 90% of people listening to this are helping a previous version of themselves. And so that is the easiest place to start. It's also the most accurate place to start because your ideal customer is a educated guess. That's all it is. It's saying, I think that there's a person out there who feels this way, believes these kinds of things, and I'm going to start talking to them. The reason that you're able to make that educated guess is because you were once that person. But if you do need to choose an ideal customer that is not a previous version of you, you're simply going to do market research. Companies spend a lot of money on market research before they launch a product. When Dyson created their new blow dryer, they worked with hundreds of hairstylists to figure out who their ideal customer was. They invested millions and millions of dollars into this process so that they could get the product right. Regardless of whether you're starting with an earlier version of you or somebody completely different, all of this requires research. So who you choose in the beginning is simply an educated guess. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day because you're going to get in front of as many real people as possible to ask them what they really need so that you can create a perfect product for them. Something that's really important to think about when you're choosing your ideal client is, what types of problems do I like to solve and what kinds of people do I enjoy working with? Because you're going to speak to your clients more than you speak to your friends and family sometimes. I know that sounds crazy, but we work for 8 to 10 or 12 hours a day and we're solving problems all day long. And if you don't enjoy solving a specific type of problem, you're not going to enjoy your business and you're going to feel like burning it to the ground. This actually happened early on in my business. I was speaking a lot about growing quickly on Instagram because I was growing quickly on Instagram and I was documenting my process. And I ended up attracting a lot of people who wanted to grow quickly on Instagram. And so I found myself in this space where I was becoming an Instagram guru, but I did not love solving problems about social media. Your ideal customer is going to evolve as well. It's not something that you can put on a shelf and never look at again. You have to continue to speak to your audience and refine who this person really is because they are going to grow along with you. If your ideal customer right now is 34 years old, in 10 years, she's going to have completely different needs. You are also going to grow as an entrepreneur and be able to offer different types of services. And so your customer might change as well. If you want to grow with your customers, you're going to need to continue to be in conversation with them. So my advice is choose a specific type of person who you think you want to work with and whose problems you enjoy solving, and then go and speak to those people and figure out exactly what they're thinking and how you can tell stories to them that will resonate. Next question is, what's one piece of advice you'd give to entrepreneur moms with young children? I love this question because it allows me to talk about the thing that I love the most, which is time management and productivity. As a mom myself of a 2.5-year-old, managing my time is everything. So my one piece of advice is to plan your week in advance. You can plan your week on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, but it has to be before Monday hits. If you sit down at your desk on Monday and you don't know what you're working on, especially as a parent to young children, things are going to happen that are going to absorb your time. And by Friday, you're going to think, I have no idea where my week went and I got nothing done. On Sunday, I like to take an hour to brain dump everything that I need to do for the week onto a sheet of paper or into my notes app. And then I put every single thing into my calendar. And I put the amount of time that I actually think it's going to take to do that task. I love to use my AI calendar motion for this because I don't have to worry about putting it into my calendar. I can block off times when I have appointments already. For example, if my daughter has a doctor's appointment, I can block it off in my calendar, and then it will put all of the tasks into my calendar automatically based on how much time I said it would take and the priority of that task. And then when I sit down on Monday, everything is sitting right there and I know exactly what I need to work on. If there's something that I couldn't get to or I just didn't want to work on it in that moment, I can move something over and say that I want to work on this instead, and then everything else will rearrange itself to fit into my week. I used to schedule myself so tightly, and it led to this feeling of constantly chasing my tail and like I wasn't getting enough done. Now I'm much more intentional about what I put into my calendar. I make sure that my goals are crystal clear and that everything that I'm working on is leading towards those goals. I like to choose 12-week periods for my goals based on the 12-week year, which is a great book that I'll link below. If my actions can't fit into my calendar every week, I know that my goals are too big and I'm probably not going to achieve them. We love to prove ourselves right as humans, so we can create these self-fulfilling prophecies where we believe that we can't be successful, and then we set goals that are impossible to achieve, and therefore we don't feel successful. So for me, it's really important that I set goals that feel like a push, but actually fit into my calendar and is something that I can reasonably do in 12 weeks. So what I'm writing down on that list on Sundays is building toward my goals for those 12 weeks. This is how I make sure that my vision for the future makes it into my calendar, because it's so easy to sit around and make vision boards and think about what we want our lives to look like. But how do you actually turn that into the work that you do when you sit down at your desk? Manifesting isn't about having the right mindset and thinking everything into existence. As Mel Robbins says, it's a billion annoying little tasks that you have to do day after day. And to me, it actually feels better to know that, because it means that I can actually do something about it rather than waiting around for my goals to magically appear. One other piece of advice that works really well for me, but isn't for everyone, is waking up super early. I wake up at 4 a.m. even on weekends. I know that's insane. And I have been even during the holidays, because my best time of the day is early in the morning. A lot of people will tell you to use this time to work out, meditate, write in your journal, read, do all of that good personal development stuff, which is amazing advice. But I can do more work in those precious 2 hours than I can do in the entire day, especially for tasks that are cognitively difficult. So I reserve those 2 hours to do the hardest thing in my day, which is usually planning a training or writing content of some kind. I find that everything I produce during this window of time is so high quality, and it's not painful to produce. I sit down at this desk, it's dark, I have a coffee, I wrap a blanket around myself, and I start writing whatever I need to create that day. When my daughter wakes up 2 hours later, it feels like 5 minutes have passed. And then I get to go about my morning feeling like I've already done the most important thing today. Everything else is a bonus. So after I drop her off, then I have time to read and journal and go to the gym, and I don't have to feel like I have this huge day ahead of me and I have to rush through everything so that I can get to the real work. The real work is already done, and I actually get to enjoy that time. I know that's not a fun answer, but that is my honest advice for people who have young children and need to get a lot done. Now I'm going to answer a question that I'm sure everyone is asking right now, which is, how do you keep your energy? The short answer is that I just have a really low tolerance for feeling bad, and so I make a lot of decisions that help me feel good. Honestly, I keep my energy by getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night. I know that sounds crazy because I wake up at 4 a.m., but I really do go to sleep at 8 or 8:30. And yes, I also do it on the weekends most of the time. If there's a special event or I want to celebrate something with my husband, I'll go out later and I will sleep a little bit later the next day. But when I wake up later, I'm not tired at night, which then sets me into this habit of going to bed later and waking up later. So sometimes I'll stay up late later, and I'll still wake up at 4 a.m. knowing that I could take a nap in the middle of the day if I need to, or I'll just be ready to go to sleep early and then I'll feel even better the next day. My husband takes the night shift and puts my daughter to bed, and he'll wake up with her in the middle of the night, and then I take her in the morning. I get her ready for school, and he has his whole morning free. That's the system that works best for us because I am a morning person, he's a night owl, and we work really well in that system. That is a huge part of how I keep my energy up. Another way that I keep my energy up is by exercising, and I do it in ways that feel good to me. So I live very close to one of the Great Lakes. It's right outside my window, and I walk along the water pretty much every day. A lot of the time, I'm practicing my trainings for the week. I love to walk with my notes and talk out loud and practice what I'm going to say. If I'm at my co-working space, I'll go to the gym and walk on the treadmill and then lift some weights. Whatever I'm doing, I'm just making sure that it feels really good for me and that I really want to do it so that I feel like it's a treat. I also drink a ton of water. I believe this is 40 ounces, and I try to drink 3 of these a day. And I eat the same thing pretty much every day when I'm working. I do this because it creates consistency in my body. I know what makes me sleepy. I know what gives me energy, and I just choose the things that make me feel good. I also don't drink alcohol anymore. I used to love a glass of red wine at the end of the day, but once I had a child who woke up before 6 a.m., it started to feel really stressful that I might feel yucky the next morning. So I stopped drinking alcohol, and I don't miss it at all. The short answer is that I just have a really low tolerance for feeling bad. And so I make a lot of decisions that help me feel good. And the people around me have learned to accept that. And they don't push me to eat and drink things that I don't want to. They don't push me to stay out late. And they just know that I'm going to be going to bed early. And it has to be really special to get me out of my house after 7 p.m. I'm by no means perfect in terms of my diet and exercise, but I would love to get even better at it. I would love to feel stronger. I would love to dial in my nutrition and my training even more. And that's one of my goals for 2025 because I'm curious about how I could feel even better. I'm 38 now, and I want to continue to feel this way when I'm 58. So that's something that I'm thinking a lot about now. The next question is, can you break down how each of the stories that you tell fits into each of the 3 circles? If you haven't been inside of the Storytelling That Sells challenge, you're going to have no idea what this means, but I'll explain it quickly. When I started my business, I realized that there was this other piece to storytelling that I hadn't explored before. I had a ton of experience with entertaining, connecting, and educating through media. When I added in the piece of selling a product, it created this 3-part framework that I call the Resonate framework. I like to think about it as a 3-part Venn diagram where one circle is your story, another circle is your ideal customer, and the third circle is your product or your service. When you put these 3 together, you can connect, educate, and sell simultaneously through storytelling. If you look at my business, you'll notice that I only tell the same 2 or 3 stories over and over again. Sometimes I'll focus in on small details inside of those stories to create new stories, but I'm not talking about every area of my life. I'm really only talking about a few key areas that I know resonate with my ideal customer and are related to what I'm selling. So this person is asking, how do those stories fit into these 3 circles? I love to tell the story of how I found the idea for this business. I had just quit my dream job at one of the biggest and hottest media companies in the world. I was so burnt out, and all I wanted to do was start my own business. So I gave my notice. I moved to Mexico City with my boyfriend, who's now my husband, and I bought a really expensive online course to learn how to start a business. And I really gave it my all, but I could never really get a grasp on exactly what I was doing. And now that I'm looking back, I can see that it was because I wasn't speaking to enough real people about my business idea. Business owners weren't documenting their lives in the same way that they're doing it now on social media. And there weren't a lot of places where I could go to talk to my ideal customer about their problems. So I was trying to get in front of real people as much as possible, which is an amazing thing to do when you're starting a business, but you don't really feel like you're building something until you know what problem you're solving. And so I kept feeling like I was stalled on my progress. I went back to Toronto where I could talk to more real people who were my ideal customers. And once I got home, I started to feel really insecure about the decisions that I'd made. I was 30 years old. I didn't have a fancy job. I was trying to start this thing that I didn't even know really what it was. It felt like everything was moving so slowly and I didn't have anything to show for it. So when I would go to a party and people would ask what I was up to, I had nothing to say. All of my friends were getting promotions and getting these great opportunities. And this was just really hard on my ego at the time. Eventually I caved and I got a new job at another media company and I went back to work. It was really the fact that I couldn't land on the problem that I was solving that led me to give up. Now we can talk to so many people simply by telling our story and finding the people who resonate with it. I was able to identify the exact problem that I was helping people with. And rather than spinning my wheels for months and feeling completely defeated, my business grew every single month until I was able to quit my job just 2 months into my business. And now I have this incredible community, this big business that feels so amazing. When you know how to tell the right stories, you can attract the right people who have the right problems that you know how to solve. And that's when your business can really take off. This story shows the full path that I took from being discouraged and giving up to finding the problem that I needed to solve and building a really successful business. And you can see how this story fulfills all of the criteria in this Venn diagram. It is my specific story. It's one that only I can tell, which helps me stand out from the crowd. And it's relevant to my ideal customer because I know that they're probably struggling with similar issues. And it sells the payoff of storytelling. So this is just one example of a story that I love to tell because it ticks all the boxes of building connection, educating, and selling the value of my business at the same time. I can pull little pieces out of this story anytime I want. I could zoom in and focus on my time in Mexico City, or I could zoom in on my time back in Toronto, and I can use this story in so many different ways. I can use it in a sales conversation, when I'm teaching on stage, in a speech. If I was being interviewed by somebody, it could be my origin story for how I came up with my business. There's so many different ways that I can use this story for different purposes, but I'm always selling the payoff of working with me at the same time. If you want to know more about the Resonate framework and how to use it in your business, the Storytelling That Sells Challenge is an amazing place to be. It happens every month. I'll put the link in the description so that you can see the latest dates. You can either buy a general admission ticket where you can see the live training every day, or you can get a VIP ticket. You get an hour of group coaching every day, and you can ask me your questions about storytelling in your business, and we can workshop some of these ideas together. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of That Storytelling Podcast. I hope that you're inspired to hit the ground running in 2025 by telling the right stories to the right people. If you're listening on Spotify, please leave a 5-star review. It's the easiest way to help other people discover this podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe so you get a notification every time I launch a video. Regardless of where you're watching or listening, please leave a comment below and let me know what was your biggest takeaway or what story are you most excited to incorporate into your business in 2025. I would love to hear from you. This community on YouTube and Spotify is growing so quickly and it's already one of my favorite places to hang out on the internet. So thank you for being here. It means the world to me and it gives me so much enthusiasm to keep doing this in 2025 and beyond. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach me in my DMs on Instagram and we'll keep the conversation going. See you again next week.